Here we are once again with Mrs. Adepeju Oyesanya.
And every time you say my name, you get better and better at
I
it.
enjoy saying your name. I think if you've got a name that is not English, when people are speaking in the English language, they should make an effort to get it right. Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting it right, but
You get better. Thank you.
I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Adepeju is a certified lactation educator, which means she can advise about breastfeeding. And there's certain issues in breastfeeding that are challenging for women simply because over the years we have moved away from the breastfeeding culture being a normal part of our culture. So we're trying to reverse that. And I remember my grandmother telling me, when I spoke to her about some of the challenges of getting started, she laughed and she said, now the challenge is getting them to stop. Because, you know, once you settle down into breastfeeding, it's easy, it's pleasant, it's convenient. You know, it's a time of relaxation and bonding for mommy and baby. But then sometimes people ask about when to stop, and then because baby gets so attached, they ask about how to stop. So, very simply, I think those are the questions I'm going to ask you, Adepeju, on behalf of all our viewers. How do you stop and when do you stop?
Okay, I'm going to tell you off the bat, I'm the worst person to ask that question because I believe in really child-led centered.
Okay, let the baby lead. So why is that? Why are you saying that's the worst?
No, I'm the worst person to ask because I can't tell you the 10 things. Like I don't have the 10 top list of how to stop it.
Okay.
Because I'm child-centered, I believe that the child will let you know biologically when they want to cease breastfeeding. Now, a lot of people might say she's being unpractical. She's just being totally impractical. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I need, on this day, I want my child to stop. And I have to say, I have 2 children of my own.
Right.
One who's 3 right now, who's currently just weaning himself.
Okay, he's weaning himself.
He's weaning himself.
So he doesn't come to you for breast milk very often anymore.
No. You know?
Okay.
But I didn't stop it. I don't tell him not to. He'll be playing and all of a sudden, like, I swear, I think I should breastfeed. He'll come over, breastfeed for like a second and go his own
way. So it's almost
way.
his way of saying, I wonder if this is still available.
Yeah, and just maybe just wants to reconnect.
Okay.
Or just says, hey, is mommy still available just for a little cuddle and stuff.
So eventually you think he's going to lose interest spontaneously.
Yeah, because the research has led us to conclude that anywhere between 2 to 4, on average, children will stop naturally on their own.
Ah, so you mean if you don't make them wean, they're going to wean themselves?
They're going to self-wean. Okay. That's why I'm saying I'm more on the child-centered weaning. Now, I know there's mother-led weaning because maybe you need to. Or, you know, you're going back out to work. Or you need to take a certain medication.
That happened to me.
Right.
So I started weaning a few months earlier than I had wanted to because the medication was important.
Right.
And it was not compatible with breastfeeding. But there are many medications that are.
Yeah, there are. And like you said, there are some kinds where you will need to for medical reasons and or practical reasons for the mother. So I can't offer advice. Not like I can, but I just prefer really just go child-centered. For those mothers who find themselves in that situation where they need to wean, right, because of certain situations that have arisen, I would say to find ways to keep the bonding. So for example, most kids will like the nighttime feed. So don't cut that out with the first one.
Okay, so you cut out the daytime feeds.
Cut out daytime feeds first. Find ones that, you know, if you play a little game or you hug them up or you do something,
it will distract them from wanting
They won't realize they didn't nurse. But if that child particularly will nurse before they go to sleep or part time in the bedtime ritual, continue that one as you minimize the ones during the day first. Find ways to express to that child they're still important. Because a lot of us are working mothers. We spend a lot of hours away from work. So sometimes that breastfeeding that child does really is a reconnection to you.
So you mean it has an emotional purpose for the baby?
Yeah, it has a very strong emotional purpose for the baby. The baby's like saying, Mommy and I are spending our time together that we've been doing. So maybe you don't cut off that wean that it happens immediately again when you return back to work. But you may cut out maybe another wean or something when you return. Not the first one that child, he or she would have received as soon as you came in the door, if that is with your practice. But slowly and gradually find ways compatible to your needs and to the child. And I also must say in the self-weaning process that the mother is going through, period, because I would say she's self-weaning this child, look for warning signs. The child gets sick, you know, that may not be a time to wean.
So you may be planning to wean now, but the child is sick. So you can give more emotional support and
by
more
breastfeeding.
Immune support
by breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Or you're in the process of weaning and the child gets sick. Again, the emotional and the immunity. Go ahead and say, even though I've been planning, we've been going along so well, if the child seems to need that, go ahead and meet the child's need.
Or maybe teething.
Yes, go ahead and meet the child's need, and then thereafter you can go back to your schedule. If the child isn't eating, you know, if they move, if it's 6 months later, the child isn't eating food because they're missing the breastfeeding, that could be a warning sign that child's not emotionally ready to stop. So I'm saying that as a mother, it's important to find the balance. I'm always telling myself as a woman, I need to find the balance, right? So I can't tell a woman not to self-wean if that's what she needs to find her balance. But I'm also telling her to look at it also from the child's perspective and find a balance between your immediate needs and the child's needs. If needs going well, continue to proceed with, like I said, those things that I mentioned come up. Then take time to reevaluate the weaning process and say, is it working necessarily for our family? We need yourself and the child so you can, you know, evaluate.
In the local culture, I've heard the retort, and I've seen it, you know, on Facebook comments in particular, with reference to that big furor of this Time magazine picture of the 3-year-old. I've heard people say, well, you know, from the time the baby has teeth, that is time to stop breastfeeding. I'm thinking, but that's crazy, because some babies get teeth at 4 months old.
And we're talking about the teeth, because again, that is another thing that needs to be debunked. A child that has teeth does not necessarily mean that child's going to bite your breast. I don't know where we get that conception.
But some of them enjoy biting your breast. Because there's this look of excitement because of your reaction.
But that's your fault.
Because you reacted in a way that is amusing to the baby.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I mean by it's your fault. So what you need to do as a woman is just like anything else. If you don't like something, what do you tell somebody?
Stop it. You say stop.
So you detach, you put your hand, clean hand at that, in the child's cheek area.
And you say no.
Detach, and you say no.
That's right.
A stern no, you're not yelling, you're not screaming. No.
Yeah.
That child will register in your brain, wait a second, mommy's not laughing, mommy's not making an amused face, mommy said no, and she's taking the breast out.
Yeah, so that in other words, it's not worth the game. Because what they say is that if you yelp in pain, or if you laugh and, you know, sometimes you cry and laugh at the same time, then the baby has a big grin on his face. I've experienced that. They find it amusing.
Yes, because it's a joke to
them. They're not feeling your pain. They're just seeing your funny face. It's like, hey, if I do that, I get this reaction. Hey, let me do that again. So I see it as an opportunity to introduce discipline into the relationship. Gentle, loving discipline.
I was going to say positive discipline.
Positive discipline.
And we all need positive discipline. I think as parents and as mothers, we cannot be afraid to discipline our children. But that discipline does not mean you cease breastfeeding. It just means you discipline them in a positive way to say, hey, don't do that to mommy.
And from what I've experienced and from what I have heard from other moms, when you take that approach, the baby stops biting you.
Right. And then we can continue on.
And you've got your first lesson in discipline down.
And a positive first lesson.
Positive first lesson in discipline.
And because sometimes I think discipline is seen so negative, but I think there are positive ways to discipline children.
And I think the ideal discipline is a positive experience, because discipline is about learning to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. Yeah. Now, another note on weaning. I know we're running short of time here. Another note on weaning is that there's a misconception that the breastfeeding doesn't serve a purpose after the first year of life. And that's why so many people actually in our culture screw up their faces when they see an older baby who's already walking or talking coming to the breast. In fact, they may tease the baby and say, hey, you're a big man, what are you sucking that breast for? You pass that stage, you're supposed to be drinking from cup. So sometimes the adults actually tease the baby and tease the mother for continuing nursing beyond the first year. So what do you have to say in that situation?
it's dangerous. And the reason why I say it's dangerous, what you're actually creating is a closet culture.
A what culture?
Closet culture.
A closet culture. What is a closet culture?
Where women will breastfeed continuing after the first year of life, past the 12 months, but they'll do it at home. They'll do it away from the eyes.
Okay, so they're trying to avoid criticism. So they'll only do it when nobody can see them and make comments. Yeah. And so why is that so bad?
It's so bad because number one, we're not seeing the whole life cycle of lactation in that way. We're not being given positive reinforcement that there are women who breastfeed after the first year.
So we're making it. We're not. We're not supporting mothers in their choice to continue breastfeeding beyond the first year because we're hiding it.
We're hiding it.
Yeah.
And in addition to hiding it, they're not educating other women to support them to say that this is actually good for the child. And again, I don't know when our viewers came in. We talk about cancer, and we really want to bring this is a good point to really discuss cancer.
Yeah.
The longer you breastfeed a child, any children, whether this is your first child or the child you may have, you're in your second or third, the longer duration of time that you breastfeed, you reduce your cancer rates. So I always tell
cancer risk.
As an individual. Yes, as an individual. So I always tell moms, you should actually thank the child. And moms
for wanting to continue breastfeeding.
I'm like, the child is doing you a favor. You should actually say thank you that the child has chosen to breastfeed beyond a year.
And the simple explanation for that is that the hormonal exposures are different during the breastfeeding period because you have different hormones involved acting on the breast. And there's a strong relationship between breast cancer and the natural hormones that the body produces and the menstrual cycle. So even though you might be menstruating, the balance of hormones, even though you're seeing your period while you're nursing your toddler, the balance of hormones is different. But it's not just how long you breastfeed, it's actually cumulative. So if you've got 3 children, you've breastfed each of them for 2 years or 18 months, your risk is reduced more than if you've had 4 children and breastfed each for 2 months. Yes.
Right. And so that's why I always tell my moms, you should thank the child because the child is helping reduce your chances of cancer. In addition, the child still continues to get immunity.
Immune support.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's overlooked. I think that we assume that once a child has reached the 12-month mark, that they are standalone.
Yeah, independent, but the immune system is still developing after the first year.
Yes.
The brain and the immune system continue to develop.
And that's how research tells us the most important developmental time period for children is 0 to 3. So that if they get that additional boost, as I like to call it, because I believe every time you breastfeed a child, you're actually giving a boost. Without having to go pay your pediatrician for a booster shot, you yourself are giving a boost to your child. And not only are you giving them a physical, medical boost in the sense of assisting them with their immune system, you're also giving them a boost of self-confidence. You're giving them a boost of belonging. You're giving them a boost of identity.
Would you say that babies who've been breastfed into toddlerhood are more confident and more ready, on average, to be more independent and, I don't want to say detached, but leave the fold of this anxious clinging to the mother? Are babies who are breastfed into toddlerhood more likely to be independent or more likely to be dependent on mother?
I think the research lends it to tell us that their children across the board breastfed are just more independent. Overall. I think that comes back to the initial thing about bonding, that self-confidence, that reassurance. Because I think another thing I really want to talk about, that I think a lot of cultures fail in this way. We tell parents, don't be responsive to the child.
So you're saying the Western culture, because I don't think this is true of traditional cultures. Or maybe you may not want to say Western culture, urban culture.
Maybe it's urban culture, but there's a culture globally. I've experienced it in the States and here locally. People will tell you, let the child cry alone.
Let the child cry.
Locally, you say you're giving the child too much hand.
Too much hand, when you're picking up the baby all the time.
But we say really up to age 6, 8 months, you really can't give the child too much hand because all you're doing is simply responding. That responding that you're doing when the child cries, whether you pick the child up to feed them, to hug them, to lullaby them to sleep, to talk to them, to sing to them, to walk with them, you're reassuring that child that their needs are being met. You're socially bonding, building connectivity between yourself and that child, giving that child some level of assurance that, hey, I know if I tried, my needs will be met.
That's right.
So I have a sense of security.
And what happens, and you see, when we think of the brain, sometimes we forget that the emotional brain is also developing. It's not just the logical part of the brain and the balance and the posture that has to develop in those first few years. The emotional brain is also on a developmental path. And one of the things that breastfeeding does, especially if breastfeeding is not limited to just the first few months, breastfeeding helps to develop an emotional brain that can trust in the capacity to have a loving relationship with another human being. So it really makes the child more prepared for strong relationships. And strong relationships are the basis of strong families and strong communities. So, I don't see breastfeeding as just a nutritional issue. It is a social issue. It is a community issue. It is, in the best interest of our societies.
As a whole. And it's in our best interest, and I will say, for parents, grandparents, workplaces, hospitals,
right,
OBGYNs,
everyone who's involved,
every person who's involved, to have adequate information, provide adequate support, so that we can do two things at once. To me, lactation is one of the two things. I'm really, my policy background, we're about being cost effective.
So it's cost effective, yes.
Right.
And that was a big attractive factor for me, because I looked at the price of formula and I was like, oh my God, this is going to cost a fortune.
You're seeing that you're looking at the individual level.
Yeah, that's the individual level.
I'm looking at the macro level of lactation.
On a national level, all the imported formula, oh my.
And not just imported formula, I'm talking about the healthcare system and the social system.
Right.
And that's how I see lactation being
right. Greater cost burden to the hospital. You've got more kids with ear infections and gastroenteritis and pneumonias and even meningitis. And therefore you've got less women and men in the workplace and more antibiotics and costs in the health system. Am I reading you?
You're reading part of it.
I'm reading part of it.
And an additional cost that is burdened by the state is the social issues that arise with unadjusted adults.
Unadjusted adults, because they don't develop an emotional attachment.
There's no emotional
an ability, a capacity.
We talk about social intelligence.
Social intelligence.
That doesn't exist. That's something that, like you said, as you're developing a child's balance, teaching them to walk, teaching them to crawl, we focus on all of those things. But we also need to focus on, we're also teaching children emotional intelligence. That's why play dates are important, right?
Right.
You're teaching a child to play. That play you're teaching a child, you're also teaching a child to negotiate. You're also teaching that child to talk out their needs and wants. You're teaching that child to share.
Right.
All that are components of emotional intelligence. And that's the intelligence that you can teach your child and you help support when you give them a safe, bonding experience through lactation.
I believe that breastfeeding and the so-called attachment parenting, which is often misunderstood, facilitates the emotional and social intelligence development simply because it is based on recognizing and respecting and responding the cues of the baby. So I think it teaches, because children, babies, learn from what they see modeled in their environment. So I think if you bring up your children by being more responsive to them, more polite and respectful, then they in turn learn to be responsive, polite and respectful to those around them. So we could always talk forever about breastfeeding, can't we? There's so much to say.
And that's the beauty of it. And I think that is the need for us to look at. I always say I look at my lens, the lens that I use for preventative health through the lens of lactation. Because there's a lot of preventative measures that can be taken simply by breastfeeding. And I think that we as a society, we as a global community, within Trinidad, outside of Trinidad, need to start understanding the benefits to all of us.
Because you've got nutritional, you've got economical, you've got social, you've got psychological,
emotional. You have all these things that it's just good. It's just simply good.
So we've got to do it.
It's the best start.
Yeah, the best start. Yes, yes. So with that, on that note, believe Mrs. Adepeju Oyesanya of Besta, certified lactation educator with a background in policy. You know, she wants to change the world, will you let her?
Exactly.
You have my support, Mrs. Oyesanya.
And exactly what you let me. It is just saying that all of us have the capacity. Two things that really moved me is JFK. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your
John F.
country.
Kennedy.
Yeah.
Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we all individually have the ability to facilitate change. No matter how we see it as small, but it's changed nevertheless. And hopefully that change will motivate our countries and our nation to be better citizens. Because I even think even nations are citizens.
Right,
They're part
global
of the,
citizens.
yes,
Yeah.
you know? And I think we have a great opportunity to be better global citizens.
So let's change the world, people.
Yes, all of us collectively change the world.
That's right. So we look forward to that. We look forward to seeing changes not only in the world of breastfeeding, but in everything that we can do to make this a better society. Thank you
Thank you so
Mrs.
much for
Oyesanya.
having
Thank
me.
you so much. I enjoyed this.